David Phelps sits composed, his hands resting gently on the chair. The soft light catches the lines etched around his eyes, lines that tell a story of experience, of joy, and of hardship. His smile is gentle, a quiet reflection of a soul that has weathered storms. People know the voice. They recognize the songs, the albums, the concerts. They see the performer on stage, bathed in light, reaching for the high notes. But they don't know the man behind it all. They don't see the journey, the sacrifices, the battles fought in the quiet hours. He pauses, takes a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. It wasn't an overnight success. It was a slow burn, a relentless pursuit of a dream. Music wasn't just a job, it was my calling, my lifeline. It was the language of my soul. And now, I'm ready to share the parts of the story that were hidden in the shadows. The parts that nearly broke me. Quick cuts of David on stage, young and full of energy. The roaring applause of the crowd. A whirlwind of travel, airports, hotel rooms, late-night rehearsals. In the beginning, it all felt like a dream. Every performance was a surge of adrenaline. Touring the country, singing in front of thousands who knew every lyric, it was intoxicating. The energy of the crowd was a powerful drug, and for a while, I was addicted. I felt alive, important. He shifts slightly in his chair, his expression turning more somber. But dreams have a way of turning into nightmares if you're not careful. The demands, they were relentless. The constant travel became a blur of long nights and early mornings. Interviews that bled into rehearsals that bled into meetings with producers. They always wanted more. More albums, more performances, more of me. It felt like I was giving pieces of myself away, one performance at a time. David signing autographs, his face strained. A hurried meal backstage. A producer barking orders. David looking at his watch, a sense of weariness in his eyes. Slowly, imperceptibly, the joy began to fade. The music, which had once been my sanctuary, started to feel like an obligation, a task to be completed. The passion, the fire. It dwindled. His voice lowers, tinged with a deep sadness. And then there was the loneliness. It crept in like a shadow, clinging to me even in the brightest spotlights. He pauses, his gaze distant. Surrounded by adoring fans, yet utterly, profoundly alone. The world saw a man living his dream, but they didn't see the sacrifices, the empty spaces in my life. They didn't see the missed family gatherings, the birthdays celebrated in hotel rooms, the friendships that withered because I was always on the road, always somewhere else. A child's birthday party, a cake with candles being blown out, but David is absent. A group of friends laughing together, a space left for David, but he's not there. David scrolling through his phone, looking at photos of his family celebrating, a pained expression on his face. I would scroll through my phone, seeing pictures of loved ones celebrating milestones, sharing moments, and I'd wonder, is this it? Is this the price of success? Is this the life I'm meant to live? The question haunted me. He closes his eyes briefly, as if reliving the pain. But the worst part, the thing that almost broke me, was the doubt. He opens his eyes, his gaze now filled with a raw honesty. I started to question everything. Was I still singing because I loved it? Or was I just trying to meet the expectations that had been placed upon me? The industry has a way of stripping you bare, of making even the most passionate artists feel inadequate. No matter how well I performed, no matter how many accolades I received, there was always pressure to be better, to sell more, to stay relevant, to reinvent myself. One night, after a particularly grueling show, I sat alone in my dressing room, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The applause still echoed in my ears, but it sounded hollow, meaningless. I barely recognized the person staring back at me. The weariness was etched on my face, the joy extinguished from my eyes. And for the first time, I asked myself, truly asked myself, is this really what I want? Is this who I am? He pauses, his voice barely a whisper. And for the first time, I didn't know the answer. The silence that followed that question was deafening. After a particularly long and grueling tour, I finally returned home, only to discover that life had moved on without me. My family had learned to navigate milestones in my absence, celebrating birthdays and anniversaries without me. My closest friends had grown distant, their lives diverging from mine. Even my own reflection seemed like that of a stranger, a ghost of the man I once was. He shakes his head sadly. I sat down at my piano, the instrument that had always been my solace, and placed my hands on the keys, but I felt nothing. The music, which had once been my greatest joy, my most faithful companion, now felt like a burden, a heavy weight on my soul. I was completely and utterly lost. He pauses, gathering himself for the next part of the story. Desperate for clarity, for some sense of direction, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went back to the abandoned church where I used to sing as a child. It was a dilapidated building, forgotten by time. The wooden pews were still covered in dust, the stained glass windows cracked and faded. But the silence there felt different now. It wasn't the silence of emptiness, but the silence of peace, of possibility. He closes his eyes, remembering the moment vividly. For the first time in a long time, I sang. Not for an audience, not for a contract, not for applause. But for myself. I sang the songs of my childhood, the hymns that had filled my heart with hope and joy. My voice echoed through the old walls, filling the space with sound. And for the first time in years, I felt something stir inside me, a flicker of the passion that I thought had been extinguished. This was why I had started singing in the first place, not for fame, not for approval, but for the sheer, unadulterated love of music itself. That night, in that old, forgotten church, I made a promise to myself. A promise to reclaim my voice, my life, my music. I would no longer let the industry define me, dictate my choices, or steal my joy. I would create music that spoke to my soul, even if it meant walking away from commercial success. I set boundaries.